Welcome to the Camera Dude Podcast, where we focus our lens on business. We will cover the art of business and everything in between. Join your host, Rob Moorman, a seasoned photographer and RV park owner with over 27 years of experience, as he captures insights from industry experts and fellow entrepreneurs. From mastering customer service to igniting creativity, we explore the common threads that weave through successful businesses. Get ready to click, snap, and discover on the Camera Dude Podcast.
Welcome to the Camera Dude Podcast. I'm Rob Moorman, your host, better known as the Camera Dude. Join us today as we dive into all things business and life. So, hey, let's get started. Today's guest has a success story that is bigger than life, in my opinion. Her success was born out of a desire to serve her patients better. She created a system she felt served patients and other clients in a personal way. Thus, she established her own concierge doctor practice, providing functional medicine. So, guys, welcome Dr. Stacey Robinson.
Thank you, Rob, for having me. I appreciate it.
Good. You're welcome. I'm so glad you're here. So rather than do a full-on introduction of you, I'm going to ask you, if you would, to just introduce yourself so that I don't flub it up.
Okay. I'm Stacey Robinson. I am a physician here in St. Petersburg. I'm the owner of Robinson MD. We help people reach their optimal health, prevent disease, improve their health span, which is the time that you live a vibrant life. And I love what I do, and I'm just glad to be here to share that.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited to have you here and have had personal experience at your practice ongoing, which we'll talk about a little later as well. So just for fun, so that our guests and our listeners can get to hear you and know you in depth, tell them about your family and what kind of accolades do you have as a doctor?
I don't know. I don't like to talk about accolades, but let me tell my story about how I ended up being a physician. How about that? So I grew up in a really small town in Northern California called Red Bluff, very small town, and I had no idea I wanted to be a doctor. I wish I could say, I wanted to be a doctor since I was a little girl, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. I'm a first-generation college graduate, so I was the first person in my family to go to college and get a degree. I went to college with a degree in, I was going to get a degree in psychology. That's like your default, right? Everybody wants to be a psychologist.
I love it.
So, went to Santa Barbara City College, wanted to get out of the small town and get to a more exciting place. So went down to Santa Barbara City College for a year. And then I decided to be a physical therapist because I had a lot of knee injuries with sports. And I thought, this would be a great fit for me. So Long Beach State University had a physical therapy program. So I transferred there and I lived in the LA area. So it was very exciting compared to our hometown we called Dead Bluff, because there was, not much going on up there.
I got it.
So I was like a junior in college, and I was just like, what am I going to do? I had changed my mind on physical therapy. I went and shadowed a physical therapist, and it just didn't seem like a good fit. So my guidance counselor said, well, what about medical school? I'm like, I had never in my wildest dreams thought that I could do that. But, he encouraged me, and then I called my dad and I said, I'm going to apply to medical school, and ended up getting into Tulane, which is about $30,000 a year. And my dad said, well, how are you going to pay for that? I'm like, I don't know.
I love it.
He was in the Air Force, and he said, they have scholarships for doctors. And so I looked into that. I got an Air Force scholarship and ended up going to Tulane with it fully covered. Did my residency in the Air Force, had a great Air Force career, and ended up at MacDill.
Wow.
Over in Tampa. So that's how I ended up a doctor, and that's how I ended up in Florida. And I loved it here. I've been here for 30 years.
Excellent. I love that. All the questions I was going to ask you, you answered. But that's fantastic to me. What I see, and we'll talk about that when we get to business, is the bravery that it took to take on, even though scholarships were there and all, you were willing to jump in and figure out the debt as you went and do that. And that takes a lot of bravery. There's a lot of people that I see that maybe don't take that risk, and then they end up just somewhere clocking in. Mm-hmm. And listen, that's not a negative thing, but maybe there could be so much more, and you took the mantle and ran with it.
Right.
So you mentioned sports. Am I right in saying, was it tennis or pickleball?
Neither.
Oh,
No.
Where am I getting that from?
I don't know.
Listen to me.
Because everybody plays pickleball now.
Yes, they do.
I keep getting invited to play. I'm like, I do not need another sport. I play softball.
Softball.
Yeah, but I played basketball in high school, and that's where I injured my knees. And we actually went and won the California State Championship, and we were Red Bluff, California, tiny, tiny school. And we beat LA school. The three tallest women on their team were 6'4", 6'4", 6'2", and our tallest person was 6'2", and she blew out her knee in the semifinals. So we didn't have our star player, and we were, I think, our tallest person was maybe 5'10", and we beat them with speed.
Wow,
I love it. We came out, and we ended up getting to go to New York to be on a morning program because it was kind of like this David and Goliath story. It was right after Hoosiers came out.
Oh,
so our basketball season was exactly like the Hoosiers story. So we got to go play in Australia to represent the United States, and it was just a very, very cool experience. But my sport is softball.
I love it. Well, okay. Well, I don't know where pickleball is. You want to play pickleball?
No, I don't.
As the listeners know, I own an RV park, and pickleball is huge in RV parks, just massive. I think it was a northern thing, and they brought it down as snowbirds, and it's just taken off in Florida as well. So that's awesome. Well, before we jump into the heart of the recording, I have a question that's not on here. Don't panic. I said that her eyes got big. It's just simple. I am here interviewing with one of the most healthiest people, I think, on earth, and that's a good thing. So I'm going to ask a simple question. What does breakfast look like for you?
Oh, it varies. This morning, I actually had pancakes and turkey bacon, high-protein pancakes.
Okay.
And blueberries. I have yogurt, granola often, and I have egg tacos. That's kind of my rotation. Soft-boiled eggs. I always eat breakfast. I went years with skipping breakfast, just having coffee. And I found that once I started eating breakfast and high protein, fiber, fruit, and I feel so much better, energized. I'm not hungry. So
I agree with that. If I have a protein-oriented breakfast, I feel better. I have more longevity.
Yeah.
And go past noon before I eat again. My energy levels are higher. I have to watch the caffeine.
Yeah.
Very caffeine sensitive, so I do half calf in the morning, and then I'm okay. But if I do a whole caffeine, it shakes and sweats. I don't know what brings that on, but there it is. Well, tell us a little bit first. So you have an egg taco. What does that look like? Is it something you make, obviously? Because if it was pre-made, it would be a process.
It's something I make. It takes literally 5 minutes. So there's a big TikTok thing with feta eggs for a while.
Okay.
So you put a serving of feta cheese in a pan. You let it get really crispy and nice and, caramelized. And you put 2 eggs, let it, set. And then I put the chili crunch from Trader Joe's. I'm like a foodie, so
me too. I am too.
You'll get this detail. The chili crunch from Trader Joe's, 2 corn tortillas, crispy, and that's pretty much it. But it literally takes 5 minutes. It's not difficult. A lot of people think cooking takes a lot of time, and it's one pan that you have to clean, so It's really not a big deal.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, move over Bobby Flay. We have Dr. Stacey Robinson. I'm going to challenge him to come on the show and top that at this point, all right? We'll see if that works. All right. Well, guys, topic number 1, okay? I like to take my listeners all the way back to the beginning of your success journey, if you will. And because of that, I wanted them to see where you've come from, what you did. And so I mentioned it even in my last podcast, but one of the large CEO, if you will, larger-than-life CEOs that I've had on here started selling sub sandwiches at Jan's Heroes on 4th Street. And it was kind of a local iconic place in St. Petersburg for 40 years. And this guy's a marketer. And even when he was making subs, he ended up helping market the sub shop and what have you. So the question is, what was your very first job?
I had 2 jobs in high school, and I hate to say this because I would never go to this restaurant again. McDonald's was my first. It was the only fast food restaurant in our small town. So I worked at McDonald's, and then my other job was I was an aide for a quadriplegic woman. So I went to her house and helped her,
Excellent.
with anything she needed. And we became great friends. And, she passed away at a pretty young age, complications from the quadriplegia. But I think that was my first introduction to helping people and really being in the healthcare, industry. Well, not really an industry, but I think that gave me a taste for what I would then become later.
Right. Okay. Well, and I would see, I was going to mention it, but you said that was your beginning of healthcare, the relationship that you were able to build with that person, as well as caring for them and friends and so on. But I would also say that, of course, McDonald's is McDonald's, but you probably learned customer service.
Yes.
You learned how to do things at a quick pace and all of that. And sometimes you may have learned how not to do things.
Right.
But in general, I see a combination of good things there that maybe helped kickstart your career to where you are now. All right. Well, one of the business questions I have, because I've noticed it at your practice, is how do you manage to have repeat clients? Just, simply build trust and relationships with them. I say at every podcast, I think I'm going to make a T-shirt with it on it, but it's easy. The easiest client to get is one that you already have.
Right.
So, and you have that. I see it at your seminars. It's all the same clients that are coming, and they're very loyal and committed. What are you doing so that someone that's running their business out there may not even be in the medical industry that maybe would help them?
That's a great question. And I think there are several important things to that, achieving that. Number one is listening. I think in medicine, most people have experienced go to the doctor, be asked a series of questions with the person not looking at you, typing in their computer. I've been told that doctors don't even really touch people anymore in terms of doing an exam, but not listening to the story. So when I really try to let my clients, my patients, tell their health story and just listen. And I would say I have heard so many times that nobody's ever done that before as their physician.
Fascinating.
So I think listening to what their goals are, what their needs are, just again, listening. And two other things, I feel my most important role is to be my patient's advocate and help them get what they need. So that might not be something that I'm providing, but I can find somewhere else. So for example, like we have over the years, my 16 years of practicing, have collected what we feel are some of the best specialists in the Tampa Bay area. And I have them on speed dial. If I have a patient who urgently needs somebody, I get them in.
Excellent.
And we get them in within days, usually, if needed. So being their advocate. I have a patient who's been in the hospital for 3 months now, and several times a week, if not every day, I go and see that person. And I'm not taking care of them in the hospital, but I feel like I'm their advocate.
I love that part of your business.
Yeah. Number three, I think a lot of physicians are kind of dictators, like my way or the highway. They aren't open-minded to other alternatives, and if the person doesn't follow their instructions, they get angry. So my style is very much a partnership. I will give the information. I might say, hey, we have 3 options here. 1, 2, 3. These are the pluses and minuses of each. If you were to ask me, what would you do? What would you recommend if it was your mom or dad or sister or brother? Then I will tell you, I would choose number 2. And I would tell you why, and then let you decide. Sometimes if I don't agree with somebody's choice, my goal is to make sure they have the information needed, because you might not understand the negatives of a choice. So I think being a partner, being an advocate, listening, and number 4, probably being accessible. My practice. If you need me, you call me up. And, obviously I would want you to call my office first if it's something that isn't my job. But if you're not getting what you need, I will tell you, I want you to call me and tell me. If you're not getting what you need from my staff, I want to know about it and fix it. So I think those kind of are the main.
So what I really hear is there's three things, but I'll mention two here. And one of them is the art of listening, which is hard to do, really hard for me. I don't know. I'm just busy upstairs and I don't listen very well. This podcast is good training in that. We're sitting here with a guest. But so listening is important so that, first of all, you're patient. And for a business owner, we would use the word client, but they feel heard. And they might have all these thoughts racing around in their head. And so they want to get it out to you. And I would imagine the things they're discussing, and of course we won't go into depth, but would allow you to decipher what's wrong with them by what they're saying.
Right.
So you're listening and, somebody says, blah, blah, and you go, okay, that's inflammation. That could be diet or that could be whatever. So I know that's running through your head. I was going to mention it later, but I am a patient of Robinson Medical. Dr. Stacey and I met, I don't know initially where, maybe a referral. And Moorman Photographics had done some photography for you early on when you had moved into the first location you were at. And when I heard what you did, my doctor, somewhat similar to you, had passed away. And I had let a couple years go where I didn't have that, and I was going to a regular general practitioner, and that was the problem. You just get a simple sinus infection, and it was 6 weeks before I could get in. And I'm like, well, that's not what I need. And so I found you, and we joined. And before we talk about the next topic, tell people, without mentioning price, I think, let them talk to you and get into those details. But what does the structure look like to join a practice like yours?
So, yeah, and I think it's if we have time to talk briefly about insurance-driven healthcare versus private healthcare, for lack of, or concierge medicine.
I think it's good because most small business owners are self-insured somehow,
Right.
So
insurance-based healthcare is very much disease, illness-oriented. So they reimburse based on diagnosis codes for disease. They don't reimburse, somewhat for like a physical, like a wellness physical, but really that's not their focus. And they kind of, it leads to I'm sick, I need to go to the doctor. So it's very reactive to sickness and disease. And it's very much about managing chronic disease. Conventional medicine is not very good at promoting health. And I think we'd all agree on that. They're great at managing disease and acute illness. You have a heart attack and go to the hospital. I mean, it's amazing, the technology that we have. And that's good, and we shouldn't throw that out. But at the same time, we need something that focuses on health.
Something that keeps disease. Us from having the heart attack in the first, or at least lessens the risks.
Yes.
So
that is my passion, and that is why I went into this model, which you could call concierge medicine, private medicine. Direct care is another popular, a little bit lower priced model. But the goal is that we are proactive, not reactive. So my patients, my clients, they come in regularly and not just once a year, typically every 3 to 6 months, often if they have issues that we're monitoring. And most people do. So it's very proactive. It's very prevention-oriented. We focus on finding disease before it's a disease, when it's a pre-disease, pre-diabetes, pre-hypertension. Those risk factors that lead to heart disease. And, the number one killers are heart disease, cancer. And so we want to find those early. So innovation, knowing what tests are out there. There are tests that 90% of the population has no clue is available to screen for cancer and heart disease. And the reason it's not being offered is because it's not covered by insurance.
Okay.
So I would rather say to you, Rob, I think you need to have, for example, a coronary CT angiogram to see, do you have plaque in your coronary arteries? Now, you may not have chest pain yet, but do you want to wait till you have chest pain or a heart attack? No, you want to know right now, right?
Exactly.
So that test will cost you $250. It's not thousands of dollars, $250 to find that out.
And so, that's $250 could be life-saving.
Absolutely. Yes. So, there's a cancer screening test that is, in my mind, a game changer in cancer. Actually, one of my oncologist specialists, who is my absolute favorite cancer doctor, he told me about it and he said, I want this test. So it isn't like these tests that we're talking about are not, are kind of fringe medicine where it's kind of like, that's little woo. we use the word woo. That it's something that, isn't beneficial, valuable, legitimate, maybe is a word.
So it is legit. It's backed by science.
Yeah, it's just not covered by insurance.
So it's not covered by insurance. The doctors can't cover their expenses on it, so they don't recommend it.
Yeah.
And it's really not their fault.
Right. It's not their fault.
It goes up into the world of insurance. Okay.
And for 10 years, I practiced in conventional medicine. So we didn't talk about that when we were going over my history, but for 10 years, I practiced in that world, and I was just like, I'd see patients every 10 minutes who were on 15 medications, who had 10 diagnoses that really weren't diagnoses, they were symptoms. Acid reflux, depression, all these fibromyalgia, all these things that were like, why do you, and in functional medicine, which we haven't talked about that term, that's kind of like getting to the root cause of symptoms rather than naming diseases. We ask why, not what the patient has.
Okay.
So rather than saying, you have gastroesophageal reflux, fibromyalgia, depression, we say, why is the patient depressed, have acid reflux, pain all over their body? Like, where is that coming from? And identifying that and fixing it.
So that question of why is a game changer in medicine to me. You're really looking, I like to say as a photographer, you're looking at the whole picture. Mm-hmm. And so, sure, someone might have inflammation in their knuckles, an arthritis of some sort, but yet you're going to look at it and go, okay, let's help them with their pain, but why are they having this problem?
Right, exactly.
They're eating something they're allergic to. There's a reaction in their body. Maybe it's from a medicine. Maybe it could be one of anything. I like that.
Yeah.
So the idea is then that in business, we like to talk about providing high service. When I see businesses fail, it's usually not because their product isn't that good. It's usually because they don't present it properly, deliver it on time, do it with a smile, etc. So all the things you just mentioned, sure, they're medical, but I see that all in the ultimate goal of providing phenomenal service to a patient that's coming into your office. And you have managed that to the nth degree. Just by what you've told me, that's enough to say that your success where you're at now, from helping someone in their home to the Golden Arches to having your own practice on the 9th floor of a high-rise in downtown St. Petersburg, which we'll get to address and how they can find you a little later in the podcast. But it's absolutely phenomenal to me to see that. And that's what we want to get into in this. But before we do, you have a book. And I'm pretty excited. It is on my coffee table at home. And in my ADHD way, I am reading it. I'm about halfway through. And I don't know if you know this, but I think it was Christmas. I'm pretty sure it was. I bought a stack of them and gave them to my family as gifts.
Very cool. You never told me that.
Yeah, I came into your office and said I want the whole stack. I didn't even go online and buy them. And took them home with me. I was there for a visit. And so my mother's read it inside and out. I have a sister who's vegan, and she loved all the health knowledge that came out of that. And my other sister, I think it's just sitting on her shelf, but we'll see. Maybe she'll grab it and read it. And I gave it to some friends, and I think actually, now that I think about it, I bought 2 extra, and I ended up giving them to clients. So that, I'm Mr. Promoter here. So the title of the book is Roadmap to Health. So before we go into it, I want you to tell the listeners where they can find it.
So it's on Amazon, Roadmap to Health, 7 Steps to Alter Your Destination. And we have them in the office, but I'd actually rather have you get it on Amazon because you can do a review, which I would love. It's so hard to get book reviews. I wrote my book because I had written hundreds of handouts on all these various things. And I'm like, I just need to put this in a book. So,
I love it.
yeah. So
well,
I
the
put it
work
in
was
the book.
almost done. I mean, it was compiled all in one place. So you had your data.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Well, the book covers a lot of what you've spoken about in the form of health and how you help people. And it also has your story of you in the beginning there where you worked in traditional medicine and transitioned and so on. So that's an awesome thing. What is now, from a business perspective, you wrote a book. Obviously, it makes you an authority in your field, into which you actually are. So how has that book helped you as far as with your peers and maybe even your clients or patients?
I mean, yeah, I guess I agree with you. The book does give you some establishes you as an expert. For me, the book was very therapeutic in writing because I got everything down on paper about my story and what my philosophy is. And I had no idea about you giving it to everybody, and it just warms my heart because I've had other people tell me that too. Like my sister, she bought a whole bunch and gave them to all of her friends because she really felt strongly too about how important it is to really know the information that's in there so that you can make your own choices of your health. It's your body, it's your health. If you want to be on the side of a pill for every ill, and I have some patients like that who are just like, I just want the pill. I don't want to do the work. So I have to agree to disagree with them. And maybe they're not the best fit for the practice, but it's their choice, you know? And if you're educated and make a choice, then that's up to you. And I have to respect that. And I do try to respect that when my clients have that
outlook.
Yeah, exactly. So I have not done a good job of promoting my book and really getting it out there. It's very, very difficult, as you may know from talking to other authors.
It is.
Especially if you don't have a book publisher and I did this quasi self-publishing with a person who knew how to publish a book. So just getting it out there is really a challenge. And if you do a podcast on somebody who has insight on that, tell me it so I can listen.
I will do that. And I'll do a shameless plug for my producer because we're sitting here, Naaman Creative. They design websites, brochures. They host these podcasts for me. I would think that maybe a website built just for the book and social media pages just for the book. And then they would help you here at Naaman Creative build that following, but you would also get involved and take the following that you have on other platforms and invite them in to do that. So this is a good place to do that.
So maybe my podcast can be Roadmap to Health, and we can go from there.
An idea is born right here on the Camera Dude
awesome.
podcast.
Yay.
You guys heard it first. I love that. Roadmap to Health.
Yeah.
A light bulb went off in my head as you said that. So, well, these are the guys to do it. And I'll tell you what, busy people are busy people, and you and I are in that category. I'm used to be a sound technician. I could sit down and do all this, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. I don't have the time. So the convenience of coming into the studio, they have all the pro equipment. They pull out the best sound. We have Jordan over there. He's waving at us. He's an awesome editor, and just a little plug, he's a really mean guitar player, too. I can tell you he can bend a string like nobody's business. But I'll tell you that it made it easy for me. All your job will be is to find your guests
and show up.
Content and show up. And you, because you love what you do, could talk about it for years.
Yeah.
So I know that that's a good thing. All right, well, we've discussed this a little bit, so let's be brief on number 4. Okay, I'm going to read it verbatim. Let's discuss your philosophy as a doctor. I read on your website that every symptom has its root causes. We've kind of gone over that. So it says we get to know each individual's needs to treat the root causes, restore the body's natural balance, and promote long-term health. I gathered from earlier conversations that you do that. It's through science. So someone might hear the word alternative and go, it's not necessarily alternative. It's proven, just not covered by insurance, as you said.
Right.
So if someone walked in, I don't mind sharing. I have an ankle that's got a problem, and I come in and it's in pain. Your question is why and where did it start and what is it stemming from and why is it not healing? Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Well, then I love that. And then the long-term health, you've been in business how many years, did you say, in practice?
Well, this practice 16 years, and then prior about 10 years.
Okay.
25 plus. Yeah.
I had hair when you started.
You did.
She still hasn't been able to fix that for me. I don't know what. I'm just kidding. All right.
Can I elaborate on
Yes.
this question just a little bit? Because
Yeah, get us in the right direction.
so the body is such an incredible machine, and the body is designed to restore balance, to help clean house. We use the word detox, get rid of all the garbage we're exposed to in the environment. So it's really important to give your body the foundations it needs to maintain balance. And the first thing we look at with somebody who comes in is what foundations are not present. Okay, and foundations, what I mean is clean water, clean air, nutrient-dense fuel. Your body runs on fuel. So garbage in, garbage out, you're putting garbage in or something that you're not giving your body what it needs, it's not going to function optimally. And sunshine, nature, sleep, movement, like that's the foundation. So if you're not doing the foundations, that's like that's like the bottom of the pyramid, right?
Okay,
so
starting.
We really focus on that primary number one. And then, number two, what are you deficient in? Do you have a chronic infection? Do you have a toxicity exposure from something? So we look at environment, we look at foundation, we look at family history. Family history, just because somebody in your family has a disease doesn't mean you're going to get it, but it might increase your risk. It might mean that genetically you're predisposed. So we look at genetic factors, and then we look at what tests do we need to establish what is out of balance and what is needed. And then we come up with a plan. And when somebody has a symptom or a disease process going on, it's usually not one thing, right? And so we're looking at all the things, because if you can fix everything that's contributing, you're more likely to get a good outcome. So that's kind of the approach to restoring balance and identifying what needs to be done to get there. It is absolutely science-driven, physiology-driven. It's just a different philosophy. And, there are a lot of conventional doctors who just roll their eyes, functional medicine, it's a bunch of, quackery. It is, if I took that doctor and sent him to the Institute for Functional Medicine foundational course, every one of them would be blown away, because the studies that are like the research that we are taught are totally legitimate, scientific journals, peer-reviewed. We're just not exposed to them because they're not drugs. Like the drug industry, the pharmaceutical industry, really drives physician education from medical school on.
Fascinating.
When I go to my American Academy of Family Practice, I'm still board certified. Like every single lecture is about a pharmaceutical. And I'm just sitting there like, okay, this is not the only way to treat diabetes, So it's a philosophy, and I think it's the future of medicine. And there are more and more doctors going into this area. And we have specialists who come to these conferences and are just like, yeah, this is the answer. So
I love that. And so I don't like the word alternative. I like your word philosophy. As a layperson, I would say that you're taking a different angle, but it's still very medical, very scientific, and very approved. I had a doctor years ago, he's since passed, Dr. Wunderlich was his name, and he was kind of a pioneer, at least in our town, on the vitamin IVs and the all of those things that were all considered alternative at the time. He was a pediatrician in the beginning, and he wrote a book, and he wasn't being big-headed with the title of the book, though it sounds like it. It was called The Real Doctor. And in the opening, he explains, and I remember reading because he had somebody in his life, maybe his son, was sick with a cancer. Doctors told him to go home. Here's medicine to comfort him, prepare for him to die. Well, he's still alive. He's in his 50s, his son, and he's running marathons. This doctor had changed his direction in the same direction you're in now and saved his son and opened a practice and carried that on for another 30 years, I think. And so I was a patient of his. So I know it worked.
Yeah, I wish I would have known him.
Yeah, he was...
he does sound like a pioneer.
He is a pioneer, and he was a unique person. He had just a different personality, but you couldn't not love him. In his 80s, he was still running marathons. I would see him down at the St. Pete Pier running back and forth, while I'm standing there with ice cream, right? And but him and his son both are running marathons, and that was their almost passion. It's not even a hobby.
Yeah.
It was more than that for them, and they were good at it. So that's awesome. Well, let's move into a couple of other things for business. You have steps that you do because I've attended them. So tell me a little bit about what you do to have patient relations. In a business, we would say client relations. Same thing, in my opinion. You hold these seminars and what have you. Tell us from a business perspective, what are you doing to keep your circle active, alive, and retain them? And then talk a little bit about how you're finding new clients.
So I think just touching your clients as often as you can so they know that you're thinking about them, that you're out there. And we try to do that in multiple ways because everybody has their own, things they pay attention to, right? So first of all, every patient who comes in for a visit, we schedule their next visit based on when I think they need to be reevaluated. So I think it's a little bit unique, and I know even for concierge practices, I know other concierge doctors who are just like, they wait till, if someone doesn't make an appointment, they just wait till they come in. And we hound our patients in a way. You may have been hounded before. Rob, you're due to come.
Let me just input that it's not a negative hound for the listeners. Don't fear joining. It's not like that. But yes, because you care about our health, you'll reach out.
And we'll say, hey, you're due. And if you're busy, if something's not urgent, it's like, okay, we'll check back with you in another 3 months, But we try to keep people coming in for their proactive care. We have newsletters we try to have promote things in the community that we use for health. Also, new tests that are available, like the coronary CT angiogram, the Grail cancer screening. We educate on different tests that are available, on new things we're doing in the office that we've found helpful. And so we send those newsletters out, usually monthly. And then once a year, we have a patient appreciation, client appreciation party. And that's for them. That's like, thank you for your business. Like, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. And we do that once a year. I think we skipped 1 year from COVID, and this year we might not get one in because our lobby is being renovated.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So those are the main things I can think of. And seminars, this year we had planned to do a seminar per quarter on foundations of health and how to support your body's own cleaning house detoxification mechanisms. So that was our theme for the year. So we're having multiple, educational events on that. We try to be on social media for people who follow Facebook or Instagram. We have our people who do that and try to get the same message out via those routes.
So a quick question, because you mentioned a lot of things. There's a lot of planning. How many employees do you have?
14.
14. So you have a team surrounded behind you to keep those gears moving.
Yeah, and that doesn't include the digital marketing because that's, contracted out.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's still part of your team, so let's call them 15. They might have more than one, but let's call them 15.
Yeah.
So, all right, that makes sense to me. So I attended a seminar not that long ago at your office, and it was pertaining to changing your lifestyle to not drinking. And so you showed us, you had little stations set up and what have you. Tell us a little bit about that, the premise behind it. And before I let you do that, I found it educational. I took home a ton of information that I'm still using, and I ended up networking for my business while I was there. And that wasn't the intention, but it happened. So tell us about that event, because I think that is also a community builder. Yeah,
that was my favorite event of this year. It was actually, the premise was healthy beverages, because every day we drink beverages. Okay, right. We've got our morning coffee or tea, we've got our daily hydration, we've got our evening beverages. So our, premise of that was to clean that up. Okay, are you putting every single day something in your body that may be not so good for it? And so we had stations of morning beverage, daytime beverage, evening beverage. We had our favorite non-alcoholic beverage store. Can I mention it?
Yep.
Urban Flow, Herban, Urban Flow. I love them.
I shop there.
Love them. I spend way too much money there. But, a lot of it was about alcohol, because alcohol is a toxin, and it's a socially acceptable drug toxin that is really terrible for our liver. And we now in our office do a FibroScan, which is a liver scan that detects fatty liver and cirrhosis or scarring. We have found patients with advanced liver disease who had no idea they had it.
Wow.
And it has been game-changing in our practice. And the FibroScan is actually now, or screening for fatty liver and cirrhosis is actually recommended in high-risk individuals now. Diabetes is a risk factor, obesity, high triglycerides, anybody who's like a daily drinker, that would be a risk factor. So we decided we wanted to get FibroScans on everybody. So we looked for a place to send patients for FibroScans. And guess what? We couldn't find anywhere to send them. So we called the FibroScan company and we said, where can we send patients? And they said, well, do you want to have one in your office? Absolutely. So we leased this special ultrasound machine, and now we try to screen everybody who's willing to. Some people don't want to know, interestingly. But I'm not I drink alcohol occasionally. I used to be one who went home and I'm just like so stressed out. I mean, being a physician and owning a business is very stressful. And I'd have my glass of wine, maybe two. And I was just like, this is not good for me. And I want to practice what's good for my long-term health. That's what I do. So I started looking for alternatives. And that's when I found Urban Flow. And I was just like, and we had been detecting these people in the office that had severe liver disease, and they were just social drinkers. But in Florida, social drinking is 3 to 4 drinks a day.
Wow.
For many people. It's really, and they don't see it as a problem. It's their happy hour. They're retired. They're successful people. They have money. They socialize. And it's just not good for health span, right?
No, not at all. And I think what we look for, because like you, I do the same thing until you were schooling me over and over again, so I'm lessening that as much as possible, is that it's a quick fix for the emotional and actually some physical, meaning if you're in pain or whatever, it's temporary.
If you can't sleep.
Yeah, if you can't sleep. Okay, so it's temporary pain relief, temporary stress relief, and temporary sleep help. But I think you've said that it's really not good sleep.
Correct.
And the temporary aspect of it, it's not worth it because of the long-term effect of it over a long amount of time. So that makes sense to me. I'm glad you shared that with our listeners. And yes, Urban Flow, I don't live very far from there, and that's a problem. I spend a lot of money over there.
It's probably good that I don't live close because I'm out of everything right now, and I was like, oh, I need a...
They know me by name at this point, so I love that. Well, let me jump into something a little bit different because we're going to get close to our time here in a while. So what advice do you have for someone starting from the beginning that you wish you knew when you started?
In terms of just business?
Yeah, business and or your medical practice, either or. You know, things of, I should have prepared this way instead, or, what would have propelled you faster if you knew what you knew now back then? I think I've stumped you.
Oh, yeah. It's a good question, and I'm thinking about it. So when I started my business, I was like, you know what? This is the greatest idea ever, and people need this, and I'm going to do it. And I had found a little office to lease at a very low price because I didn't have any clients when I started. It was just kind of an idea.
Okay.
And I had a practice here in Florida, an insurance-based practice. And then I ended up moving to California for family reasons. So I was out there in a group practice, and then it was a very bad real estate time, and we couldn't sell our house. So we moved back to Florida. And I was like, okay, this is the time to do something new. I had heard about concierge medicine, so I thought, I'm going to do this. And I didn't really have a plan other than this is a great idea. People need it. I got my laptop, my cell phone. My clients are going to have direct access to me. I've got my bank account, my business name. And then nobody came. It was like hanging your shingle and nobody came.
Scary.
And the thing is, at that time, 16, 17 years ago, nobody knew what concierge medicine was here in Florida. It was a big thing out in the West Coast, not here. So I had to do a lot of education of people of what this means. You mean I have to pay you to be my doctor? I have insurance. Why would I do that? Well, as everybody listening knows why you would do that now, right?
Yes, very much so.
But I didn't anticipate the education it was going to require to get people buy-in, right? So how would I change that now? I'm not sure, because that's a tough, in my opinion, problem to solve, because you have to put so much into education to get the clients. I guess what I ended up doing is having seminars, and that got me clients. So maybe doing that sooner, maybe working with a business coach, because in medical school you learn zero business. So I didn't know anything about business.
Amazing.
And I ended up working with action coach Pinellas, who you're familiar with. They're Barb and Ford Kais and Juliet Kais. They're a family-run business coaching. And I started working with them, I think, about a year or two after I started my practice. And that was one of the best things I ever did, because they taught me about business and all the factors that go into that, finances and marketing and getting your story out there and putting your story in words. And I started reading business books. I could have done that earlier. So maybe the business coaching and education, business books, which there are so many great books out there, and educating my potential clients sooner than later, because it took me 5 years to give myself a paycheck.
Yeah.
And that paycheck was not very, it was like, I think my daughter makes more in a year, and she's 21 years old. And she works part-time.
Okay.
That tells you
makes
anything.
Sense.
So,
well, what it says to me is you jumped in with both feet, unknowing, which I'm that way. I jump in with both feet, and I'm hardly prepared. This podcast is proof of that. But I can tell you that what you did is you learned what was needed by jumping in, and that part of it is education. And so you educated yourself, in turn educated your clients, and brought them into your circle and built this. They say it takes 3 to 5 years for a business to get started.
absolutely.
And if you make it past the 5th year, you're probably going to make it.
Yes.
So to me, what you just said is that a lot of folks start their businesses today and they want them to just take off within a year, but it's not. I call it the microwave mentality. Put it in, cook it, it's done. So, here's my business. Why am I not busy? Well, there's a building process that takes place. And so you just covered that.
Yeah.
To me, that's probably one of the best business topics that I've had on this podcast, in the sense of know before you go. And if you don't, learn immediately. And I think it was the fear for you. I don't want to use the fear word negatively, but you got in, nobody showed up, and you went, okay, this isn't working, but I'm still on this path. So the other thing is you were diligent and didn't just jump out and go back into the other form of medicine.
Right.
You stayed there and rode that boat upstream until you hit your success. So it's not easy.
Yeah.
So I think our listeners need to know that, especially if they're doing a startup business and they're just getting into what they're doing. Everybody wants the fame of a business owner, but nobody wants to do the work to get there.
Yeah.
Right? And you did the work to get there, and that's why you're there.
Yeah, I think something else that really helped get traction was I started writing a blog and about health, and so that got us organic SEO and word of mouth. And I started trying to go to networking events and meet people and meet other business owners, and also find speaking engagements, anywhere I could. I spoke at the Rotary, about how long-term health and foundations of health. So I think, and having patience, because you're right, and I tried to keep that in mind, it's going to take 3 to 5 years, and it did.
Okay.
Before you really get the traction.
It took Moorman Photographics 7 years. I started this thing in a little bedroom in my home. I didn't have a studio. I went on location to do my work. I love to tell the story. I had 2 old filing cabinets with a hollow core door over the top of them. That was my desk. And I had one of those Mac computers, the Blueberry computer. It was purple and it was huge. But it really wasn't the main way of doing business. And I would get up, commute through the kitchen, past the dog, and into my office, and I worked that phone, and I would hit 3 or 4 networking meetings a day and follow up with clients and do all of those things. And it took a long time. I was busy, but I wasn't making money yet. And also I would grow. I finally, working at home, I no longer photograph weddings, but I had a group of clients come in 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday. They were out at the beach. I'm in the Tyrone area, so they're leaving the beach, heading back to Old Northeast area, passing my home. So at 10 o'clock at night, they knock on my door to pick up their wedding album that I had told them a week ago was finished. And I'm in a ratty T-shirt and shorts, and my wife and I are watching a movie or whatever we were doing. And so the very next day, I went and looked for my first location. I was off the beaten path, but it worked. And I was there. I stayed there too long out of fear. I thought, gosh, can I take on all this overhead? Well, the company I subleased with, it was called the St. Petersburg Clay Company. It was a bunch of artists, but they had a clean space up front. They were doing pottery in the back, ceramics, and some beautiful art. I became a proficient art photographer because I was associated with them for years. And but having said that, when I did move is when I grew. So I think you build up the courage, dot your I's, cross your T's, and jump in once you've got your stuff together and take action immediately instead of waiting, because I waited too long. I got comfy. My rent was low. Everything was good. But they moved. And where they moved is now the Warehouse Arts District. It's wonderful. But it took 20 years to become that. And they knew it was coming that. But when I went and looked at the location, there was a car upside down that had been burnt to a crisp, literally right across the street. And, of course, I was big into portraits. Well, I still am, but I was doing children's portraits. So all I could see was Mommy with a baby stroller and 4 kids, and she's walking through this area that was kind of rough. And so I didn't move with them. I ended up purchasing my own location, which, glad to say, is paid for.
I'll tell you, that's a great decision.
Yeah.
And I would say if I could change something, that is something I would change. Is really, we've tried to find a place to purchase over the years and just didn't find something perfect, but I think we should have tried harder, because paying high rent, and I'm right downtown in a high rise. It's a big overhead. So I think trying to find some real estate to invest in as a business
Can
is a good
a small businessman like myself, I'll give advice for what it's worth. I say that the purchase of my property, it's mine. What I did is I bought it personally for the business to utilize. But I look at it, if something were to happen to me, we don't have kids, but I have nieces and nephews, and I treat them as if they were our own kids. So if something happens to me, that building is there for my wife. She probably won't carry on photography, but she could lease the building out, sell the property. So it's an investment in our family by owning that property. I had photographer friends that would jump in the game and rent a space and drop, back then it was a lot of money, $30,000, $40,000 on remodeling the space. They're there 6 years and they leave, and the landlord gained all that benefit, new floors and walls and whatever. And they had nothing to show for it. So, and that bothers me a lot. And my mentor did not do that. He purchased a building, which is why I did. And in his retirement, he sold that building for over $1 million on 4th Street and has done quite well for himself. In his retirement, he's having fun out in his garage, woodworking and teaching people how to do fly fish tying and all of that stuff. And it's because he had that property. So at some point, I recommend that you look into that, and or our listeners that are getting started, it's worth the effort. It really is. So, well, what does a successful person like yourself do for fun? What do you really, how do you blow steam?
Yeah. So I mentioned sports. I'm really still into sports. I actually play on a travel softball team, senior women's competitive softball. So we go to tournaments. We travel all over the country and go to tournaments. It's a 50-plus team. So that is, I play softball like 3 or 4 days a week sometimes. So that is just, I love it. And I have since I was in T-ball. As you know, I ride a motorcycle.
Yes.
And we have that in common. I have a Harley, and my husband rides too. So we try to go on motorcycle rides. We're going to go to Sturgis next August, which was on our bucket list. And we bought an RV. So another thing we have in common, you with your RV park.
Yes.
Which I haven't been to yet.
We'll get you there.
Yeah, so we love to go camp in the outdoors, but have the comforts of a kitchen and a bed. So we go around in our RV And I spend time with my children. I've got 2 adult children who just are my world, and I try to take them on trips when I can and when they have time. And yeah, spend time with my husband. I try to get movement in every day. I feel like moving your body is one of the most important things you can do for longevity and staying strong. I like to cook, and I'm a foodie. I like to try restaurants and go find high quality, healthy food that is delicious.
I love it. I would love it if you compiled a list for your patients of all the healthy places in town.
We have one.
Oh.
The problem is that these places go out of business, and then I look at it and go, half these
are gone.
Are gone.
Well, send me the old list.
I have to I will revamp it and send it to you.
Okay.
Yes.
I love that. Well, I'm glad that you're camping. There's something special about all of that. Motorcycle riding, yes, it's dangerous, but I ride anyways. A short story. I had a wonderful mother-in-law, my wife's mom, who was just the sweetest person you ever met, really smart. And she retired. I hope I have age right here. My wife will correct me if she hears this later. But I think it was 60 or 65. She retired. And right at retirement, or just before, she had caught cancer. And so she spent, I think it was 4 years of her retirement fighting cancer. Ultimately, unfortunately, the cancer won. And so that taught me something in life, is that I could live a normal life, simple, and still get sick and die, or I can ride my motorcycle and maybe something will happen, maybe it won't, but I had lived.
Yeah.
And there's something about clearing your head on what motorcycle riders call wind therapy.
Yeah.
So, and
it's akin to meditation, actually.
It is.
Yes.
I agree with you, actually. And that's when I'm done riding, my world is good again. I can't explain it, but it just is. So it's worth it to me. I'm supposed to ride Sunday.
Of course, head to toe gear and protection.
Thank you.
You and I agree on that.
Yes.
For sure. Yeah.
I just for my listeners, and then we have to move on, and then we'll talk about it. A good friend of mine who I love dearly, I was in business with in the 80s. I used to be in the motion picture industry. I did 10 years there. Oddly enough, I had a form of catering company. We had a big step van. I was only 18 years old, Mr. Entrepreneur here. And we were serving motion picture crews, filming really large, $500,000 to $1 million budgeted commercials for TV. And I was feeding 150 people on this thing. Craft service provides party food all day. That's what I would call it. There's also a caterer that serves 3 hot meals. But when you're on a set, they're 18-hour days. So they'll come over to my truck. They don't buy it. There's a budget. I load my truck. I prepare all of this, put it out, and have a nice professional spread for them. They can also come and get a Tylenol if they have a headache, because you can't leave the set. You're there. So it's a place for them to just find comfort in their day, grab a beverage. Looking back, I served a lot of Gatorade. Now that I know more about it, I don't know that I would have bought it all. But, of course, they request things, and so you do that. So that's interesting. Well, so you're a motorcycle rider. You're into camping. I love the special nature of camping, even though it's not always cheaper than hotel, but there's something about your own space, your own stuff, and you're meeting your camping neighbors sometimes and get to hang out with people. I love that. So, hey, speaking of camping, it's a perfect segue. This is a quick word from our sponsor at Sunburst RV Resort.
Are you ready to escape the hustle and bustle of the city and experience a taste of old Florida? Welcome to Sunburst RV Resort, your oasis nestled in tranquil woods and surrounded by picturesque farmland. At Sunburst, we offer modern amenities with a touch of rustic charm. Enjoy our 2 pools, our clubhouse, our game room. It's perfect for families and winter guests seeking refuge from everyday life. With full RV sites and hookups, cozy cabins, and spacious tent sites, there's something for everyone. Whether you're a snowbird seeking solace or a family looking for summer fun, Sunburst is your destination for peace, quiet, and country living. And the best part? We're just an easy country hour away from beautiful beaches and a few minutes away from the majestic Blackwater River. Explore nearby quaint towns, indulge in some shopping, and savor delicious meals at local restaurants just a scenic drive away. Escape to Sunburst RV Resort and make memories that'll last a lifetime. Book your stay now and experience the beauty of old Florida.
All right. So Dr. Stacey, I do this closing on every podcast. You may have heard it if you've listened. I stole these questions, so I give honor due to James Lipton, and I never pronounce Bernard, but I think it's Bernard Pivot, who created these, and James Lipton added them to his show called Inside the Actor's Studio. I always recommend go to YouTube and watch it. James has also passed just due to age. He was an acting instructor, and he would have these very famous people and ask these questions. So it's kind of fun. Be jovial, relax, have a good time. What is your favorite word?
I have many favorite words, but I would say love.
Excellent. That's one of the best. I love this. What is your least favorite word?
We'll go with hate.
Yeah, that's I get that from every person, but I agree.
Yeah.
And hate is strange because it's usually based on a preconceived idea that someone has, and it's not usually really correct. That's the problem.
If you do everything in love, you win always.
Yeah, love always wins. You're right about that. So what turns you on in life?
Oh, so many things I just love to do. You know what? I love to not have a plan and just like my favorite days are those days where my schedule is clear and I can go to my to-do list and pick out a few things that maybe I've been putting off, but then do something I love to kind of counteract.
So I think that you, the listeners, were just written a script by Dr. Stacey to clear your schedule for the whole day with no plan and do whatever it is you love.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. All right. So in life, what turns you on?
You know what? I think arrogance and closed-mindedness is something that just is a pet peeve of mine. It's just in life in general, people who are not humble and open-minded to ideas, to opposing arguments, to new information. And in medicine, I think some of the doctors who are missing the boat are just, they're not open to learning anything new. Like if they didn't learn it in medical school and training, like it doesn't exist. It's like, well, that's not science. Like we learn things constantly. We have to be open-minded, but not so open-minded that your brains fall out.
Well, I love your statement because that's also where progress comes from. And sometimes things don't work out, and sometimes they do. But if we don't try, we don't know.
Yep.
And so you have to dig in. All right, this one's fun. What sound or noise do you love?
The ocean waves and sounds of nature. You know, birds, wind. I think nature is so healing, and it's something we've lost touch with.
I agree with you. Take your shoes off, everybody that's listening.
Walk
go out
on
in the
beach,
backyard.
walk on the grass.
On the beach, walk on the grass. I love that. What sound or noise do you dislike?
Oh, yeah. Like being in a place that's really busy and voices. It's just so, and I know somebody with ADD is like, that kills you.
Yes, it does.
Because you can't focus. And I don't have ADD, but I do have that problem where if I'm in a noisy place, I just like need to put some silencing headphones on to clear my mind.
It's overbearing. And I have these little ear things, and giving somebody a plug, I don't know the company, but they're called Calmers, and they're not earplugs. It's not battery powered. It's a little cone that you put in. You can't see it. It's very small.
What's it called?
Calmers, Calmers. And when you put it in your ear, all the noise behind you, it's almost like putting your hands on each side of your ear. And if I'm at a table talking, I can hear you prominently over all the noise behind me. Otherwise, somebody's talking to me, I'm listening to the conversation behind me because it's interesting.
Yeah.
And half the time I look up at my wife at dinner and I said, what was that? I'm listening to these people over here. She gets so frustrated. Bless her heart. I love it. So what profession other than your own might like to attempt?
You know, I am not saying this because you're sitting across from me, but I have always loved photography. When I was in undergrad, I took a photography class, and this was back in the day where you're putting it in the chemicals and seeing what
I did all that.
Yeah. And I have some things on my wall that I did when I was an undergrad.
Awesome.
I'd be embarrassed to show you. But, and an underwater photographer, because I love to scuba dive. I've always
so there's a plug of a very successful woman that I want you to follow on Facebook or any platform. Her name is Jill Hyanerth. I'll send it to you. Jill is a world-renowned cave diver, National Geographic, etc., but she's also a world-renowned photographer, and it's all underwater. And I found out about her because someone that she worked with, a gentleman named Wes Skiles. I recommend following him. Wes has sadly passed away, but his work is carrying on by family members and so on at Karst Productions, and it's all underwater. My photography career started underwater. My photography passion.
I didn't know that.
Yes, it did.
Okay.
I was working at a little dive shop, which I always neglect to mention, called Treasure Island Divers on Treasure Island Beach, St. Petersburg, and it's no longer there. But they had a camera in the back, and I didn't know how to run the thing. It was frustrating, and I went to my buddy who was kind of a photographer, and I said, hey, let's teach me this thing. And he goes, go down to the Votech. They've got a course. I was going to just take 6 months, jump back into the movie industry and just gain some knowledge so I could have fun underwater. Well, that is the beginning of the story. I finished a 2-year course in photography. I interned for a year, opened my own business 28 and a half years ago, and here I am. That's all because awesome. I found an underwater camera in the back of the dive shop. So it's kind of scary. So we have that in common. Some of my original dive housings for my cameras are in the History of Scuba Diving Museum, and I think it's Key Largo. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're in Key Largo. So I went there, and there's my stuff up on a shelf, and all of that.
See, we learn more things we have in common.
That's right. Well, one of the housings I bought from world-famous Stephen Frink, who's still around in Key Largo. He's also an underwater photographer to follow. And I had bought his housing, so that was an easy gift because when they found out it was his, it was like, who's this Rob Moorman? Right. But yeah, boom. Oh, Stephen Frink, great. And the video housing was from Wes Skiles, so that's neat. Well, we have to close. I know we're over time, and there's a lot. This has been educational. I feel healthier just by talking to you, as I always do. And yes, you are the voice in my head every time I go to the exercise coach, every time I get on my bicycle, or every time I don't do the things I'm supposed to, I hear you. But hey, that's what I signed up for, right? So that's a good thing. So tell the world first how they can find you and where.
So our website is robinsonmed.com. So it's not robinsonmd.com, robinsonmed.com. And the book is on Amazon, Roadmap to Health. We do seminars. If you go to our website, you can see upcoming seminars. We're going to have one in October on cleaning up your environment in terms of personal care products, household cleaners, all the things we put on our body and have in our environment, trying to, decrease our exposure to chemicals and toxins. We're going to do that in October. I don't recall the date off the top of my head, but it's on the website. We have a newsletter. If you go to the website, I would recommend subscribing to the newsletter. We don't send you any spam. It's just usually a once-a-month newsletter with health information. And then if we're having events, we will send it out via that same channel.
Excellent. All right. So now they know how to find you. Here at the Camera Dude podcast, as someone that owns 2 businesses and is well-seated in the community, I have no problem recommending Robinson Medical, not just because they're here, but I'm also a patient. And it's one of the organizations in our town that I know, like, and trust and would send anybody to, including my mother and family members. So I recommend to you, the listeners, that if you need this type of help, this is the place to be. So jump in. So just for in closing, guys, thank you for hanging out with us on the Camera Dude podcast. Remember to always reach out to those who have paved the way for your success. They are a great resource. Until next time, stay safe, be peaceful, and always look up for directions in life. Catch you on the next Camera Dude podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Camera Dude podcast. Don't forget to visit us at cameradudepodcast.com for more episodes and exclusive content. Connect with Rob Moorman on moormanphoto.com to explore his professional photography. And when you're ready to hit the road, make memories at sunburstrvresort.com. Until next time, keep capturing moments and chasing dreams. See you on the next episode of the Camera Dude podcast.